So welcome to another wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander, and today we're taking a look at Heroes of the Falklands, and this is part of the Lock and Load tactical system from Lock and Load Publishing. This is a tactical level wargame, as you might imagine, and it's set in, unsurprisingly, the Falklands. Now, the Falklands, if you don't know, was a conflict between British forces off of what was the Falkland Islands are a small set of islands off of the Argentinian coast, and Argentina believed at the time they had a kind of sovereign claim to that. So in the early 80s they literally invaded, took over the island, and the British sent a task force down with commandos, a couple paratroops forces, large naval task force with some aircraft carriers to kind of liberate the island and take it back. This game is a series of tactical missions, which are both some of them are like historical kind of combats, battles that happened. Some of them are more what-if scenarios, like if this situation had played out a different way, it would have produced this combat. So you get a bit of history, a bit of fiction, and you get it in what is a very well-known, well-established lock and load tactical system. Now, if you buy this game, at least my version, it came with the 4.1 version rulebook, and this says it's the Lock and Load Tactical Modern Era, and it's 1960 to present, and it's this full, 75-page color, almost like it's got like a card cover booklet. This is the 4.1 rules that come with it. I was using and have used. I've played games with the 4.1 rules, but they recently came out with the 5.0 rules, and this is like a full, if you look at this is a huge 250-page binder of rules, and that can seem terrifying. This is ASL? It's not. The reality is the rules are about 100 pages, but that's like everything. The last 100 pages or so many examples, like huge extended examples of play, a lot of optional stuff. There's so much of this is pictures and examples, and the text in it for war games is actually pretty significant. Like this, the font size is large, tons of examples. This has an amazing set of contents pages, which is effectively an index. Just pages and pages of examples. So it actually brings together, and you only need this. If you look on the front, these rules it's the rules for everything. So the reality is if you buy one of these games and it has this in it, just throw this away. Frankly, you just need one tome for everything. And if you learn this tome, you can pick up any one of these games. Each one of these has their little scenario-specific rules. This one has 4 pages of scenarios of like box-specific rules, which is like, here's this counter, here's what it does, or here's this unit, here's some special rules. And everything else in here is 25 pages of scenarios and firefights to play with, which is really nice. But what I played with here on the table, and what I will continue to play with any of these lock and load games, is these 5.0 rules. It's more manageable. We played Heroes of the Pacific, and that uses, this is the 1960 to modern, and that one uses the World War II, which is this size again, but it's just a whole nother book, and so much of it is similar, but there's enough nuances and different weapon types that they've made a different book for it, so it's not as much, but I like having it all condensed here. This is really nice and easy to learn. They put everything together, but any of these boxes you can pick up and play with these 5.0 rules. Very, very nice. I actually really liked these rules. I've had this game for a while, and it's just been sitting on my shelf, and I mean to play it. Finally got it all punched out, read the rules, and with the new system of rules that we got, I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna get in and do it, and I'm glad I did. This is really approachable, and it makes this tactical game really, really fun. It's nice knowing that I can now pick up the next game, or I can go back to Heroes of the Pacific, or I can play Grant's copy of Heroes of Normandy, and I've got the rules here. I have to read another rule book. Whilst this might seem huge and kind of ridiculous, it's really easy to reference. And once you get it, you don't really need to look at this because the plaids are very, very good. I can do that now. So, Heroes of the Falklands specifically. You get a lot of what you get in a lot of the other games. You know, it's multi-man counters, little squads of men, half squads, individuals like heroes, leaders, snipers, medics. You know, there's support weapons like heavy machine guns, mortars. These have anti-tank weapons. There are vehicles. In this one, you've got it's kind of light armor, scorpions, scimitars, and the Argentines have some equivalent as well. This one does have some fixed-wing aircraft and things like that. So there's Harrier jump jets that'll do some kind of air bombardments. There's a scenario that uses some helicopters for ferrying guys in and out, or attack helicopters as well. There's a lot of nuance in a lot of these scenarios, which is really nice. And they did a good job, I felt, in this. I haven't played all the scenarios, but I've read through all of them. The ones that I played all felt very different. And the ones that I haven't played yet, which I'll get to, are also, just from reading it, different again. And something that I also thought was really nice, you don't get this all the time in tactical games, is that some of them, there are these little kind of objective chits that you'll put out on the board, and it says, you know, you have to go and get that. And when you get that, it says, go back to the scenario book and read this paragraph. And it's that big red text that says, don't read ahead, don't read this. So some of the scenarios have this almost ambush-like storytelling narrative to it, which I think is really, really cool as well. I really enjoyed that. I think that's a fun, neat aspect to games, and I always like it when there's a bit more story in a tactical game outside of the story that you generate from playing it. This was actually... Was it my first? So, I've played things like MBT, which is, I think it's like 1983. Obviously, that is a theoretical game. There wasn't a shooting war in a divided Germany. But this is 1981 or 1982. Let me just... Oops. 1982. Very, very similar period. So the weapon systems are very similar, but it's a very unique mixture. You don't have heavy tanks here because they simply just couldn't bring them in the time that they needed to sail them down. So there's it's light armor, some APCs, things like that, troop carriers, but a lot of it is just ground units, different men, different qualities, but it's really nice. I don't necessarily play a lot of modern games, and a lot of that's to do with theme. Theme is quite important to me in a tactical game. We play a lot of World War II tactical, love World War II. I think it's a very interesting time period to game. A lot of modern ones, I don't know, I don't necessarily have the interest to play a tactical level modern game, but Falklands is something which has always been fascinating to me. A very, very interesting conflict, both from a military standpoint and a political standpoint as well. I played Where There Is Discord by Fifth Column Games, which is like a big Falklands game that's more about the Navy and the Harriers getting the task force down there. You're trying to fend off incoming Exocet attacks and the Argentine Navy and their scrambling aircraft. And then you do this kind of abstracted out landing. But it's not, it's a kind of like this small game. It's interesting, but this is kind of this mini game where you do the landings, but it's just a couple boxes that you're moving guys into, and you're trying to do that successfully. This is just a full tactical game with boots on the ground. The leaders are historical. The scenarios, like I said, some of them historical, some of them really good. Some of them are like, hey, what if these guys had put up more resistance instead of surrendering? Or what if this landing had been more heavily opposed? Things like that. So you do get some what if stuff there, which is, interesting to explore, and that's what makes a good game, right? But this was really my first of these modern tactical games where there was a lot of men. The scenarios that I played in MBT were very armor heavy, which was very interesting. But this is one where it's a squad of men, and they have like Stinger missiles or LAWs, very very heavy machine guns, and it's just interesting, because a lot of tactical games, it's the same tactics, moving in and out of buildings, trying to take cover, but the weapons that you fight with and their effectiveness is, you're at a point in history where, if you fire a bazooka and you hit at any kind of short range, you're going to do damage. We're past the point of having a lot of duds. It's very hard to get a dud on an anti-tank weapon, for example. But this game provided me with some very interesting challenges, but also it was nice to play a modern game that I actually cared about, so that's something that for me this was a big deal for me to play this game. Really enjoyed doing that, and that's why this is one of the tactical games from the Lock and Load tactical system that I wanted to pick up, because I'm like, yes, the Falklands is something that I grew up. And it was, people's dads had fought in the Falklands, or their uncles, or even some of their older brothers in extreme cases. Like, this is a conflict that, affected a lot of families in the UK that I knew. And so having a game on this scale it's very, very interesting to me. It's a tactical game. I love a good tactical game, and this is like all the other ones in the Lock and Load tactical system. It's move my counters around, cover to cover, spotting. Do I have line of sight? Do I have range? Try to level good attacks, and the combat resolution in these games. It took me a while to get my head around, but when we played the first one, which was the Pacific one that we played, you do these kind of opposed rolls. And then the difference between those rolls is the modifier for the kind of the hit units or the target units morale check to see if they break, kind of thing. So it's a different style of combat resolution from what I was used to, and it took me a while to get it, but I've played it enough where now I get it, and I actually really like it. It means that every combat is very unpredictable, and it also means that you have to either really level a ton of modifiers from having a big stack of dudes with good support weapons, and making sure you're got a leader there and you're getting all these bonuses possible. You do your good attack, but the die roll is important in this one. So sometimes you get some pretty swingy or random things, but more often what it is that the difference between those two rolls, if I roll a 4 and I have a +4 modifier, I've got an 8, and they roll a 2, but they've got like a 3 modifier because they're in a building. The difference between those two, an 8 and a 5, is 3. Well, what they're going to do is they're going to then roll a d6 with a +3 on it, and all they're trying to do is roll under their morale value. And so what you're trying to do is maximize the difference between those two original rolls, because that means that it's not a morale check. It's what's it called? I forget what it's called. But you roll on this direct fire table, and how much you exceed their morale by determines what happens. Like if you rolled a 1 on that kind of the break check, so to speak, and you only had a +1, and you had like, I guess you'd want to roll high. So if the target guy has a morale of like 5, and I rolled a 5, and I had like a +3 modifier on top of that from those opposed rolls, you're looking at, oh, I've got an 8, that's a 5. So usually that's going to break a counter. They'll go to their shaken side. But if I can somehow get this die roll to double their morale value, then they might be eliminated immediately, or they might be wounded or take casualties. And if it's rare that you'll start getting into like tripling values, but it's possible to get like really high up there. So that, and that could happen if on those original opposed rolls, the opponent rolls a 1 and you rolled a 6. Well, if I've got 4 modifiers and they've only got like 2, then I'm +7 to that second roll. And that second roll, then I roll a 6 +7. Suddenly I'm now sitting very pretty at 13. That's going to be at least double a 5 morale counter, which a lot of these are kind of 5s and 6s in this game. But, in other games, they're different values. So it's the combat resolution is very interesting. And I'll show you with the counters to kind of explain that a little better. But it's a fascinating system. It's not just like, do I hit and do they break? The way that there's a lot of rolls that hinge on each other, it means that sometimes you get some really surprising results. Sometimes you get some infuriating results, but like you get a good level of parity throughout a game, because with that many die rolls, things even out, and I think that is good for narrative and good for some accuracy and some realism in the game at least. I did also for this one use the solo module, so I'm going to do a whole separate take on that, just so that you guys can kind of get a feel for what that's like as well. But what I'll do is I'll kind of show you the board here and get you up to speed with just some of the basic mechanics. But I'm going to go through 250 pages here, but I'll show you what a combat would look like, and then wrap up with a few final thoughts. So I can't really show you everything, just there's too much. But I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of the layout. So here this is 2 maps, and then I have up here, I've got 2 big play aids. This one has kind of die roll modifiers, combat table results, modifiers for firing ordnance, and then a melee table. And over here I have a very big terrain effects modifiers and things like that as well. So I keep those permanently kind of under my plexi, because those are 2 which I'll never need to, I'll always want those out. And the important part here is that this one, so this play aid actually has this on the back of it. This is double-sided, but this is actually the front cover of the X maps which I'm using, and they printed the play aid in here because they know that we're gonna need that. So that was just like a bonus. I did not know that actually came with the X maps, but that was actually really nice having 2 play aids, so I can actually keep this one under here and I have to keep flipping them back and forth. Really like that. So little bonus if you do get the X maps. The X maps are exactly the same as the normal maps. They're just bigger. They're just blown up. So let me just dig out the regular maps here. I'm just going to show you. And they don't even seem that much bigger, but they kind of are. So this is map 11. So I think it's 50% bigger. Yeah, that's hard to see at that angle. That's pretty bad, but This is totally playable, but this is like lined up in that corner. You can see it's kind of 50% smaller, and I like this space and size. But if you don't have as much space, these maps that come with it are perfectly fine, perfectly doable, perfectly manageable. So, as you can tell, hexes, terrain, little counters, everything that you would expect in a tactical game. The big difference here is the combat, and that's the kind of one thing that I wanted to show you. Movement's movement, melee is melee. Although melee is very cool and as a result is absolutely lethal and bloody, but the combat itself is really, really interesting how they go about doing that. So what we'll do is we'll get a couple bits and pieces together to show you. Alright. So here we have, well, you know what, let's do it the other way around. That's what we're going to do. Alright. Let's get some Royal Marines, and they're going to fire on these Argentines. That's what we're going to do. So let's say, so we have these Argentines here, and they are a 3-3-4. The 3 is their inherent firepower, the second 3 is their range, and the 4 is their movement factor. This blue 6 in the corner, that's their morale value. That's kind of the defensive, you know, if they get attacked, that's what they're looking for to roll against. So let's put them in the middle of this road. Terrible place to be, not what you want to see. And we'll say in this building here, B5, we got a full squad of Royal Marines, and they have a leader with them, Lieutenant Smith, and then we have, and they have a support weapon. They have an L7A2 machine gun, and that adds its modifier to their inherent value, so they're looking at a 3 altogether, and they're just firing adjacent. So let's say they are firing on here. Great. And here's one of the really, really cool pieces about this game. I'm going to show you right here. This has a little superscript right here. This one says D8. Means they fire a D8 when they attack. So using a D8 instead of a D6 just means they have a more potent attack. And I'm going to roll this simultaneously, the defensive value. I'm going to kind of show you what happens. So the modifiers to the British attack. So they're going to add their 1, 2, 3 from their machine gun, plus 1 from the leader's leader rating, basically. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Because the enemy's adjacent, you add 2 more, 5, 6. And that's pretty much what we're going with. If these guys had moved, we'd add more to that. So we're going to add 6. It's a D8 plus 6. These guys are going to roll a D6. They have no defensive modifiers whatsoever. If they were in a building, you'd look at the terrain effects chart, and this would be a plus 3. So right now, it's a D8 plus 6 versus a D6. Ooh, wow. So the Argentines rolled a 3, and the Brits rolled a 1 on a D8. But they're plus 6, so this is a 7. So really, we have a 7 versus a 3. Great. This doesn't mean anything right now. All this means is you take the difference between the two, which is 4, and then this guy's going to make a check. He's going to roll a d6, and he's trying to roll equal to or less than his morale value. But we add to this the difference between those two rolls. So we're adding 4. We rolled a 7. 7 is 1 more than 6. And we consult this play chart, which we'll just get out here. So, if you look on here, the die roll, is it equal to or less than the morale? It was not. Is it greater than the morale, but less than double the morale? That was the case. And it was a good order MMC, which is multi-man counter. They are shaken. Boom. Flip to the shaken side. That seems really simple, but, for example, had I rolled that 8 and we'd added 6 to it, this is now suddenly a 14 and they'd rolled a 3. So the difference between 3 and 14 is 11. They can roll a d6 and add 11. This is at 15 now. 15 is more than double their 6. So then you start rolling on this. Is it greater than or equal to 2 times the morale? Heck yeah, it is. Then they take casualties. Casualties is even worse than shaken. You replace a squad with a shaken half squad, and so I don't actually flip this guy. I would actually replace him with, and I don't know if I have. Oh, I do. Let's see. No. He gets replaced with a single man counter. I don't think I have any on the board. Oh, yeah, I do. Right here. Because that happened to these guys. So I replace him with him, and then I shake him. So this guy is significantly worse. Even if he's able to rally, he's a 2-2-4 instead of a 3-3-4. And you can't rally without a leader, so this guy's kind of in really bad shape. If you can start getting to 3 times the modifier, you would eliminate that whole squad immediately. That is very difficult to do, but in this game, where you have that D8, it's very, very positive. The D8 gives the Brits a really interesting edge, and what they did to balance that out is that as highly trained as they are, their training is on this dice. You roll the D8, but their inherent firepower value, the IFP, is only 1 on almost all their counters, whereas that multi-man, where was that squad? What did I do with it? I killed them. The full squad of the Argentines, they have a 2 value on here, or they had a 3 value, so they have that basic, is a D6 plus a higher number, while the Brits have a D8 plus a smaller number. And I thought the interaction between those two on the dice was fascinating. It made every die roll so interesting. And then, don't get me started, when you start rolling this British sniper up here, let's get our guy back on the board here, just trolling around. So snipers normally you roll a d6 for a normal attack. Snipers roll 2d6. And this one, they roll 2d8. And you would get absolutely devastating sniper attacks, and they could wipe units off the board. And I thought that was so fun. It was so interesting. I don't know. The more I played the system, and I've played a few of these games in the lock and load tactical system, the more I really liked that combat resolution. I remember when we first played Heroes of the Pacific, it was so hard to figure out what these rolls meant. What was I doing? I'm rolling a number, Grant's rolling a number, I'm taking the difference and rolling another number and adding that number from the original roll. Oh, it seemed complex. But the more I play it, the more I get used to it. And now at this point, I'm like, oh gosh, I really like it. Because it keeps the results of every roll fascinating. And so I might roll really well, and they might roll really well. And all that does is it means that they have a smaller modifier to that kind of morale, that check against that morale. But they still might roll poorly, and they still might, this is devastating, because even a +1 to this is more than their morale. Still gonna shake. And I thought that was so cool. In this one, there's a ton of cool stuff going on. They had an amphibious landing from the Argentines. They had to go and take these buildings up here, which they did. And then they just rushed all these reinforcements, charged across the map up to this top corner. And we had a lot of action going on there. Had a blast playing this, so I'm going to wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the board, and just some of the mechanics. There's a lot here. And like you see, there was a ton of play aid cards, and there's a lot, okay? But you can get in. I have the X maps, which I would recommend. I like to have the size and the space, and it doesn't take up too much space, but that gives you an extra play aid so that you can have both of them out. So you have to keep flipping over of those two kind of key ones that I had out. And I've got my turn track. There's a couple of other play aids that you'll have referenced If you use a solo module, there's a lot more as well. So there can be a little bit of table creep for a tactical game. But all in all, I enjoy the lock and load tactical system, and having a good solo module is also really important for me. And this one I think has one, spoiler alert, but I'll make a whole video showing you what that looks like a little bit. Falklands is a fascinating conflict, one that I've always been interested in, and I like a tactical game like this because it gives me, and it does, this box has a good amount of scenarios in it. There's nothing more I hate in a game than buying a game that's got like 4 or 6 scenarios in it. That's criminal to me. This one's got a ton of good scenarios, and there's also a battle generator as well. So the reality is you can have endless self-generated ones if you wanted to just play around with this. You know, you could buy other titles in the series and just play different versions, but if you were like, no, I like this one. Like if you liked, what is it? Heroes of the Motherland. I think that's the World War II Russian one. Like if you were super into that and that's what you want to do, buy the battle generator, and you could play that endlessly forever, because there's just tons, like an infinite amount of different scenarios and configurations of maps and mission types and force compositions you can come up with, and they all balance them out through the system they give you in that battle generator to do that. So kudos, I like this system. People complain, oh, it's a very long rule book and it's complicated. I don't think that it's actually that bad. It's a lot less scary than it looks. To me, with the font size and the number of examples, it's compared to something like Combat Commander, where you've got the tiny text and it's like just text. Those games have just as many rules in reality is what it is. This game just has a lot of explanation and a lot of examples, and that's something that, having spoken to David Heath a few times, he's like, it might not be the best game in the world, but it's the best supported tactical game. Like, he is very, very, very proud of that fat rulebook with all the examples, so that as scary as this big book is, it's actually really approachable if you just pick it up and read it. Heroes of the Falklands was a blast. I thought the missions were very thematic. I'm like, I just want to play more and more and more, and it's just, to me, it's an interesting conflict, so I'm a little bit biased on that. I like the theme, but as a tactical game, it's got really good maps, and it provides you with some very interesting decisions, and I love some of the stories that came out, some of the amazing bits and pieces that happened. One of the really cool things, and I kind of showed you that, was the British forces, the Royal Marines and the Paras, they rolled that D8 instead of a D6. That makes a world of difference. And when you start rolling with the sniper who rolls 2d8 plus their modifier, it's absolutely lethal. And so just the nuances in this particular game, to me, really brought out some really nice narrative, and it brought the Falklands theme to a tactical game. And I think it successfully did that, and that's what they're going for, right? Because the tactical game could be, I'm moving a man, I'm moving a squad. It's a rifle squad. What makes that any different from any other rifle squad in any other period? It's got a 2 attack, it's got a 4 movement, and like a 6 range. Well, that's the same as any other squad in any other any other period. But those tiny, small little scenario-specific rules, the little changes that they've made, really make a big difference to me. And again, the story that they put in, and the little pieces of history, like the little flavor text of kind of what's going on, the sit rep, and the victory conditions, special rules, and the little paragraphs they put in. Why, those are so much fun to actually play. So appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been Heroes of the Falklands, part of the Lock and Load tactical system from Lock and Load Publishing, and I've been Alexander from theplayersafe.com.